Well, I'm back. I have about an hour to work on this tonight, so I think I left off explaining what I'm going to do with these little blocks. So I'm going to go cut these to length, square off the ends, and then start working on drilling the holes. If I remember correctly, these are going to go on this way, and then this guy going straight through where this hole is. I'll have to go back and look at my... Oh, right here. So apparently 0.506 up from this bottom surface. So I'm going to go lop this off in the bandsaw, chuck these up in the milling machine, cut the surfaces flat and as square as I'm going to get them, and then I'll cut back in when that's done. Okay, so I'm done lopping this off with the bandsaw. As you can see, just sort of rough cut. Next step, try and make these a similar size. So width-wise, this one's a little under. I mean, I can just barely feel it with my finger, so nothing to worry about. But length-wise, you can see I need to take off quite a bit. So I'm going to take a swipe on this side to get it flat, and then work my way down on this side. I also need to clean up the two surfaces on this one because it's sort of just rough mill. So, my mill's apparently not set up right. I still haven't changed it back since when I dropped the vise down to do this bar. So I'm going to go rip that apart, set it back up to normal, and then surface cut those two pieces. Okay, so I got my two blocks all cleaned up, and they're both 0.066 over 1 inch. I could have machined them a little more down to 1 inch, but that's just how this one happened to end up, and that's the one I did first, so I just made this one match. One thing I did notice, which probably someone on the videos already did, my hole's off center. So I need to drill like half a hole that way, which if you ever try to drill half a hole, it's a royal pain in the butt. So I think I'm going to continue to start with this block, get the center hole drilled, and then up to proper size, so it's either a slip fit to this guy or just a very slight press fit, because when I cut the slot to make the clamping mechanism, I can either spread it, slide it in, or I can shrink it a little bit to get this to go. So I think I'll drill these holes first, then maybe cut back in, else I'll drill these holes and the cross bolt hole for these blocks, and then cut back in. Okay, so I got my blocks center drilled here, and also you can see I cut a step into this block, which is the thicker of the two, which is the upper one. So in theory, these are a slip fit, like so, and notice I clear the focus adjustment, so I can sit here, twist the focus adjustment without it dragging on this block, and then the plan is to put a set screw into it, so once I get this dialed where I want it, I can just tighten the set screw so this doesn't shake loose over time, or shift over time. And then here's the lower mount. And in theory, when I'm all said and done, this will go in here, yeah, something right about like that. Only this shouldn't fall off. So what's next? Next, I need to cut a slit in, well, I need to drill and tap a threaded hole this way in both pieces. The threads will only go halfway through, so just on one half. So realistically, I will drill the tap hole all the way through both these blocks, cut a slit in them, and then drill one side to a clearance, and then tap the other side, so I can put a bolt in to squeeze these blocks shut and clamp onto the body of the camera. The other thing I have to do is on this side is drill a hole in the center of each of these blocks, thread and tap it, so then I can run a screw through this plate and into these blocks to hold it in place. That also means I need to pull this assembly out once more, figure out where these are going to go, mark them, drill clearance holes, and bolt these bad boys on. I've used up my hour of free time tonight, so that's going to have to wait for another video. Well, I'm back. So, where did I leave off? I think I was getting ready to drill the 2 mounting holes on the bottom of these guys, and then the cross hole for the clamp nut bolt, whatever you want to call that. So, I'm going to go and do that, and I'll cut back in when it's done. Okay, so I got these guys drilled. As you can see, I have a hole for a 1024 screw in the bottom, and I have 2 holes in the side to be for the correct size to tap to 632. I'm going to go and tap these bottom holes real quick because there's nothing else that needs to be done before that's done, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I have the bottom all tapped 1024. So these guys just screw in. I'll probably end up using a flathead through this bar into these blocks. In fact, I will definitely do that. These little plates that clamp onto the belt that these guys are pulled along with are almost right up against the back side of this bar, so I can't have any head stick through on either side. There is a small gap right in the center where I could line up the head. If I lined up the head perfectly, it'd work, but I'm just not going to risk it and use flatheads. So what's next? Next is the clamping end. So I need to take these guys and run a slitting saw straight down the center of both. The slitting saw is probably one of my least favorite tools for the mill. I mean, it works good, but it's just all sorts of dangerous. There's no guards on it, so it's really easy to wrap a hand or a coat or something up in the saw. And also, due to how thin they are and how fast they're spinning, you know, there's a good chance if they have a crack or a stress flaw in them, they can just explode while you're cutting. So, I'm out of time for today, but next time I will set up the slitting saw, get these guys mounted. I may even take a little video of the slitting saw so you know what the hell I'm talking about. And I'm going to slit these guys down the center, then drill out one side up to the slit as a clearance hole, and tap the other side up to the slit with 632 threads. So then I can put a screw in the side such that once it's mounted on here and the camera goes down, and I just tighten this screw and all is good. Again, if you note, not a lot of clearance, so I'm probably going to either have to countersink the heads of the screws into the blocks or use flathead or button head screws for that clamping screw. But I will figure that out once I get those slitted and tapped. So I think that's it for today. Till next time. Okay, I'm back. I got a little bit of time today, so I'm going to try and finish up the camera mount blocks. First step is I need to cut a slit through these, which is probably one of my not least favorite, but one of the more scary tools. So this is a slitting saw. You just sort of mount it up in a mill, spin it up, and then sit there and saw through the blocks. The reason I'm a little leery around these things is twofold. One, there is no guard on this thing, so if you accidentally brush a hand against this, it's just going to grab and tear the living shit out of you. The second thing is, this one's not too bad. It's a 1/16 of an inch, but especially when you get down into the smaller sizes, if there's any sort of little stress crack in here and you start cutting, this thing will just shatter and explode outward. So, bar a life-threatening injury to this, I should be back in a few minutes after I've set these up and cut them. To set them up, I'm just going to mount it in the vise, sort of like so. Edge fine the top and bottom, and then center 0, and then run the saw right through the center. Back in a bit. Okay, so I have all my fingers, and I have 2 blocks with slits cut in them. So the next part is I need to drill a clearance hole for a 632 screw on one side, and then tap and thread the other side to 632 so I can run a screw through them, so this will squeeze these holes down. I also forgot to drill is a 632 grub screw, or a hole for a 632 grub screw somewhere in here. such that I can lock down the adjuster on this guy. Looking at this, if I go in through the side, I'm only going to get like 1, maybe 2 threads. If I go through the top and sort of line it up right about like that, that will grab more threads, but when I tighten it, it's going to force the focus to turn in one direction. So I haven't fully decided how I want to do that, and I may think on that a bit before I commit. The other option is I could go down to like a 440 screw or a fine thread and get a few more threads in the side and less clamping force, which, you know, all it has to do is prevent that knurled nut from turning, so maybe that's a better option. We'll see. Okay, so I'm all done drilling the blocks. So as you can see, I drilled a clearance hole on this side and countersunk it. And then on this side, I just tapped the holes to 632. I actually just ran the tap in through this side, used this side as a guide to get that side. Works really good. So I got some 632 flathead screws. They'll go in there and be flush when they're put in. Sort of like so. I'm not going to tighten these down yet because I need to get the camera in there. But as you can see, they fit right down in those sockets. The other thing I added was this 440 screw, or threaded hole for a set screw, which then will bind against the knurl nut on the camera. So if I put this whole thing together, put this guy on first, goes just like so. So as you can see, it slides right now. If I tighten this guy down just a little bit, it's not going anywhere. And if I did it right, nope, didn't do it right. So I gotta make sure I back it off just a little bit. So what happened there is I had this knurl nut in the clamping face of this block instead of in the clearance hole in the back end with the set screw. So it's good and tight again. I can still adjust this guy in and out. Put some Loctite on that. Now let me just get this one lined up. So I'm just putting both blocks on a flat plate and then tightening the front block down just like I did the back block, or the bottom block. So there, as you can see, both blocks are locked in good and tight. I can adjust this guy in and out to set my focus, and then when I'm ready, put it out a little bit and gently tighten down that screw. Now it's locked and the focus can't change. I just loosen a bit. I can roll it, readjust, and then lock it again. Biggest part's going to be not losing that screw when it's loose, because it'll just rattle its way out. Now this whole assembly needs to bolt onto that plate there. So as you can see, the flathead here allows clearance for when this moves up and down, so I don't have to worry about that. The upper block, this doesn't go up high enough to hit it, and whatever mechanism I use to hook the hose on here, I just have to be careful it doesn't hang into this space. Now for mounting these two blocks to this plate, I have to use flathead screws because the cable clamp that clamps these slides to the belts that move them up and down protrudes into that space. There's just not enough space for heads. But I think it's just a matter of figuring out where things go. Drill, transfer, drill, tap, or drill, countersink. Oh, excuse me. 2 holes, and I should be good to go. Those are 1/16. 3 seconds. Oh, 1/16. So I can take these guys out right here. The bottom screws that hold this on are already out. So once I take this guy out,